My name is Professor Charles Brennan. I am the director of the Lincoln Postgraduate School. I'm also a professor of food science and nutrition at Lincoln University in New Zealand. So really we're looking at the demand from consumers. And consumers in the future are looking at, and the consumers of the future include yourselves, are looking at reduced carbohydrate diets, low glycemic index diets, high protein diets, diets that promote health or prevent you from aging. That will be a good diet for me to have, for instance. Liquid nutrition, looking at protein sources or gluten-free type of products, or looking at products that are going to give you satiety, the feeling of fullness. And you can see how those type of products relate to human nutrition and dietitians. I traditionally am a grain scientist, so I'm a wheat scientist or a legume scientist. I have done a lot of work in wheat and grain technology and processing. And the issues facing grain science at this moment is that carbohydrates have a very negative perception, certainly in the Western world. Mainly that perception is based on the carbohydrates being rich in starch, and starch is easily converted into glucose, and therefore that glucose then possibly leads to obesity, glycemic response, cancer, and even Alzheimer's disease. So one of our tasks in terms of being a grain scientist and a food scientist is to look at how can we alter that negative perception, how can we improve the nutritional quality of grain-based foods. If you look at nutrition and the health situation that we have at this moment in time, you can see that there are a lot of issues around obesity and overweightedness. So you can see that in America that obesity is between 35 to 45% of the population. And you can see that in some of the videos that you look at on YouTube or other types of videos. In the UK, obesity levels are also about 30%, and in New Zealand, obesity levels are 30%. Now, that's all well and good. Obesity is related to energy intake, and energy intake is obviously related to carbohydrates and other issues. You can say that obesity and diabetes are really something that we should have paid a lot more attention to 20 years ago, because we can see that trend coming through now. One thing that we need to focus on right at this moment in time is Alzheimer's and neurological diseases, because that is going to be the more prevalent problem in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time. Because if you just look at New Zealand, for instance, in 2014, Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases were accounted for by about 50,000 people. New Zealand has a small population. Our population is 4.5 million people. So what's that? 3 or 4, Guangzhou is 3 or 4 times bigger than New Zealand as a whole. Okay? However, it is estimated that by 2020, the number of people that are suffering from Alzheimer's disease or neurodegenerative disease in New Zealand is going to reach 150,000. So that's in 3 years' time, 2 years' time. And again, if we think about that globally, in 2014, we were thinking that there were about 50 million people that were suffering from Alzheimer's or neurodegenerative diseases across the world. However, by 2020, that's going to triple to 130 to 140, 150 million people. So you can see that actually Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases are going to be the disease that is going to affect you, and possibly me. I might already have it, I don't know, I've forgotten. I can't remember. Now, one of the issues regarding that is not only in terms of your own personal well-being, but in terms of cost, financial cost. Every disease that you have has a financial burden to it. And you can see that in America and the UK and New Zealand, obesity, diabetes costs a little bit of money, 180 billion, 1 billion, 280 million. And that's going to rise. However, you can see the cost of neurodegenerative diseases in New Zealand that was estimated in 2011 at 1 billion New Zealand dollars. That's more than what is predicted for obesity and diabetes in 2020. If that is going to treble within the next 3 or 4 years' time, then you can see the financial cost not only to ourselves but to the government and to our parents and our friends and families is going to rise dramatically. So the food industry is interested in terms of not only helping people to have a good healthy diet, but in terms of looking to try to minimize that. Because if we can alter that, if we can manipulate our diet to improve our well-being, to reduce the effects of obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, neurodegenerative diseases, without drug intervention, then we will minimize the costs to ourselves and our society. And I think that's why you as nutritionists need to focus about food, not drugs, but food. Because diet and food are more important necessarily than drugs. If we can alter our dietary intake, we can make people healthier much faster than by giving them drugs. Because by drugs, all we're doing is trying to relieve their burden. Obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease is not only a disease that is affecting New Zealand, America and the UK, it's affecting you. So back in 2015, I picked up a paper, China Daily or something like that, and the headline was 1 in 5 people in Beijing was obese. And that is in 2015. So that's 3 years ago. The worldwide trend is that these go increasing rather than decreasing. So you can see that obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, neurological diseases are important in China. And that's why we need to work together to try to improve it. Some of that is about the diet that we choose and food processing. So these are some slides that I borrowed from some of my American friends. And you can see that 20 years ago, a bagel, and we all like bagels or donuts or croissants, certainly I do for breakfast, it shows. 20 years ago, those bagels were 140 calories and 3 inch. Today, they're double in size, but they're also double in calories, more or less. You like McDonald's? You go to McDonald's or KFC? So 20 years ago, again, that burger that you are eating now was much smaller. Half the size, half the calories. But we still go to McDonald's, some of us do, to eat our foods. Probably more regularly than we were doing 20 years ago. So if you think about the type of food that we're eating, the size of food, the portion size that we're consuming is increasing. And that will obviously affect the amount of energy intake that we have and will affect our weight and whether or not we fit into our suits or clothes much better. And that goes to sort of just simplistically looking at the risk factors associated with obesity. So energy in or energy out. We are living in a very mechanized society now where you sit down and you listen to people talk to you. Or when I go to work, I sit down and I write on a computer. So my energy output is much lower than it would have been in the past. So that's giving me a higher risk in terms of obesity and diabetes and other things. And it's that susceptibility to obesity that is a problem. However, genetics and peer pressure and age are also elements that are factors we need to think about. So how does obesity, diabetes, overweightness really affect neurological diseases, neurodegenerative diseases? Well, a lot of the information that has been published points to the fact that If you are overweight or obese, you are 1.5 more times or 2 times more likely to experience cognitive decline or dementia or Alzheimer's disease than people who are fit and have without diabetes. And some of that is related to the way that our body looks at glucose and stores glucose, how we react to hyperglycemia or other aspects of it. And it's that potential relationship between glucose intake and cognitive function that is something that's really interesting our group now. So some of the work that we've done in the past has been related to cereal foods and things called non-starch polysaccharides, dietary fibers. And beta-glucan is just one of an ingredient that is regarded as a fiber compound. And we've done a lot of work over the last 20-25 years in terms of understanding the effect of dietary fiber addition into foods and how dietary fiber helps our digestion system, helps manipulate our glycemic response, and will potentially prevent such as obesity, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. So those are just 2 review articles which you may want to look at in your leisure time. Today, what I want to think about is ready-to-eat snack products. And ready-to-eat snack products are things like crisps or breakfast bars, breakfast cereals that you eat potentially between meals. They shouldn't be a meal replacement, but they should be in between meals. In the good old days, a snack would be an apple or a banana, but nowadays it's very much carbohydrate loaded. What is regarded as good from a nutritional point of view is that the frequency of consumption of these ready-to-eat snack products should be less than 3 times a day, and that the energy content of those snack products shouldn't be more than 20% of our RDI. However, times have changed and our diets have changed, and snacks are produced by extrusion technology. So you can see in the middle there a very simplistic form of an extruder which is making pasta. But you can make pasta, you can make breakfast cereals, you can make other types of material, food products through extrusion technology. And because that technology has grown in interest in the last 20 or 30 years, so too has ready-to-eat snack popularity increased. So since the 1970s, 80s, the energy that we're intaking from snack food products has increased. And nowadays, people like me, 18 years or older, on average are consuming 18 to 10 snacks a day. Remember, I was saying that we should be consuming less than 3. On average, we are consuming up to 25% or more of our energy, our RDI of energy a day through snack foods, whereas we should have been consuming 20% or less. So you can see that there is a link potentially between snack consumption and these type of snack foods and obesity, overweightedness and diabetes and other things. If we look at the current trends in snack food products, wellness is dominating in terms of looking at health and convenience, but also the nutritional content of those type of snack foods. And fiber is one of the interesting aspects that we need to be looking at. Because fiber, plant polysaccharides for instance, are related to manipulating diabetes, obesity, bowel cancer and constipation. Some foods and some fibers have synergistic effects, so they can work together to manipulate the rate of starch digestion in food materials. So again, I would refer you to some of our recent papers to look at those. The mechanism behind that is really about the way that the fibre, the non-starch polysaccharide, the starch and the protein complexes come together in terms of food structure and food function. And the physiological effects that that then has on the hydration dynamics, the rheological properties, fat and oil absorption or release, or particle size distribution of the material, and then how that affects enzyme accessibility and the ability of enzymes to degrade starch granules